Pigs on the Wing, Part 1 from Animals by the Pink Floyd, their album that came out in 1977. Now, tonight we're going to repeat The Wall. It's a program that was built around the follow-up to Animals that we originally broadcast on the 30th of November last year. Now, during that month, I flew over to Hollywood for 2 days to hear the double album and talk to Roger Waters about its creation. We actually met in a bedroom at the Beverly Hills Hotel. We ordered a few beers, we sat down with a tape recorder, and we talked about the double album track by track. Now, the first question I asked Roger referred to the origination of the concept of The Wall. Just where did the idea come from?
Well, the idea for The Wall came from 10 years of touring with rock shows, I think. Particularly the last few years when in 75 and in 77 we were playing to very large audiences, some of whom were our old audience who'd come to hear what we wanted to play, but most of whom were only there for the beer in big stadiums, and consequently it became rather an alienating experience doing the shows. And I became very conscious of a wall between us and our audience, and this record started out as being an expression of those feelings.
But it goes, I think, a little bit deeper than that, because the record actually seems to start at the beginning of the character's life.
The story has been developed considerably since then. This was 2 years ago. I started to write it. And now it's partly about a show situation, a live show situation. In fact, the album starts off in a live show. And then it flashes back and traces a story of a character, if you like, of Pink himself, whoever he may be. But initially it was just stemmed from shows being horrible.
When you say horrible, do you mean that really you didn't want to be there?
Yeah. It's all partially because the people who you're most aware of at a rock show when you're on the stage are the front 20 or 30 rows of bodies. And in large situations where you're using what's euphemistically called festival seating, they tend to be packed together, swaying madly, and it's very difficult to perform in those situations. People whistling and shouting and screaming and throwing things and hitting each other and crashing about and letting off fireworks and, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, having a wonderful time, but it's a drag to try and play when all that's going on. But I felt at the same time that it's a situation that we'd created ourselves through our own greed. You know, if you play very large venues, the only real reason for playing very large venues is to make money.
But surely, in your case, it wouldn't be economic or feasible to play a small venue.
Well, it would. It's not going to be on when we do this show, because this show is going to lose money. But on those tours that I'm talking about, the 75 tour of Europe and England, and the 77 tour of Europe, England and America as well, we were making money. We made a lot of money on those tours because we were playing big venues.
What would you like the audience to do? How would you like the audience to react to your music?
I'm actually happy that they do whatever they feel is necessary, because they're only expressing, you know, their response to what it's like. In a way, I'm saying that they're right, you know, that those shows are bad news.
Mm.
There is an idea, or there has been an idea for many years abroad, that it's a very uplifting and wonderful experience, and that there's a great contact between the audience and the performers on the stage. And I think that that is not true. I think that in very many cases, it's actually a rather alienating experience.
For the audience?
For everybody.
It's 2.5 years since you had an album out. I think people would be interested in knowing how long it's taken you to develop this double album.
Right, well, we did a tour which ended, I think, in July or August of 77. And when we finished that tour, in the autumn of that year, that's when I started writing it. It took me a year, until the next July, working on my own, and then I had a demo, of sort of 90 minutes of stuff, which I played to the rest of the guys, and then we all started working on it together in the October or November of that. October 78, we started working on it together.
And you actually ceased recording, I think, in November of this year.
Yeah, we didn't start recording in November. We didn't start recording until the new year, till April this year. But we were rehearsing and fiddling about with it, and obviously rewriting a lot. So it's taken a long time. But we always tend to work very slowly anyway, because it's difficult.
The first track is In the Flesh.
Yeah.
This actually sets up what the character has become.
Yes.
At the end.
Couldn't have put it better myself. It's a reference back to our 1977 tour, which was called Pink Floyd in the Flesh.
And then you have a track called The Thin Ice.
Yeah.
Now this is, I think, at the very, very beginning of the character. Call the character Pink.
Right.
At the very beginning of Pink's life.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. In fact, at the end of In the Flesh, you hear somebody shouting, roll the sound effects, and you hear the sound of bombers. So it gives you some indication of what's happening. In the show, it'll be much more obvious what's going on. So it's a flashback, and we start telling a story, which, in terms of this, it's about my generation.
The war.
Yeah, war babies. But it could be about anybody who gets left by anybody, if you like.
Did that happen to you?
Yeah, my father was killed in the war.
And then comes Another Brick in the Wall, Part 1, which is actually about the father who's gone.
Yeah.
Though the father in the album was flown across the ocean.
Yeah.
Now, the assumption from listening to that would be that he's gone away to somewhere else.
Yeah, well, it could be, you see, it works on various levels. It doesn't have to be about the war. I mean, I think it could, it should work for any generation, really. The father is also, I'm the father as well. People who leave their families to go and work. Not that I leave my family to go and work, but lots of people do and have done. So it's not meant just to be a simple story about, somebody getting killed in the war and growing up and going to school, but about being left more generally.
The Happiest Days of Our Lives is a complete condemnation, as I see it, as I've heard it in the album, of somebody's scholastic career.
Well, my school life was very like that. It was awful. It was really terrible. When I hear people whining on now about bringing back grammar school, it really makes me quite ill to listen to it. Because I went to a boys' grammar school, and although I want to make it plain that some of the men who taught, it was a boys' school, and some of the men who taught there were very nice guys. It's not meant to be a blanket condemnation of all teachers everywhere, but the bad ones can really do people in, and there were some at my school who were just incredibly bad and treated the children so badly. Just putting them down, all the time. Never encouraging them to do things. Not really trying to interest them in anything, just trying to keep them quiet and still and crush them into the right shape so that they would go on to university and do well.
What about the track Mother? What sort of a mother is this mother?
Overprotective, which most mothers are. If you can level one accusation at mothers, it is that they tend to protect their children too much. Too much and for too long. That's all. This isn't a portrait of my mother. Although some of the, one or two of the things in there apply to her as well as to, I'm sure, lots of other people's mothers. Funnily enough, lots of people recognise that. And in fact, a woman that I know the other day who'd heard the album called me up and said she liked it. And she said that she listening to that track had made her feel very guilty. She's got sort of 3 kids, and I wouldn't have said that she was particularly overprotective towards her children. But I was interested that she's a woman of, well, my age. And I was interested that it had got through. So I was glad it had, I mean, if it means that much to people, I think that's good.
And then comes the track Goodbye Blue Sky.
Mm.
What is actually happening at this stage in Pink's life?
Since we compiled the album, I haven't really clearly tried to think my way through it, but I know that this area is very confusing. I think the best way to describe this is as a recap, if you like, of side 1. This is the start of side 2. And you could look upon Goodbye Blue Sky as a recap of side 1. So, yes, it's remembering one's childhood and then getting ready to set off into the rest of one's life.
And then comes the track What Shall We Do Now? Is this, the assumption would be this is when the emergent adult...
That's right. Now, that's the track that is not on the album.
Right.
It was quite nice. In fact, I think we'll do it in the show. But if you know, it's quite long, and this side was too long, and there was too much of it. It's the same tune as Empty Spaces, and we put Empty Spaces where What Shall We Do Now is.
Because without those words, listening to the album...
Yeah, it makes...